All right. Well, welcome everyone to Cooking for Reducing Disease Risk, part one of our series, Heart Disease. My name is Amy Rosenfeld, and I am a registered dietitian for Northern Westchester Hospital, which is part of Northwell Health, part of our community health team here. This series is a three-part series that will occur once per month for the next 3 months. This is the first of the series. Next month will be focus on cancer prevention, and November in honor of American Diabetes Association's Diabetes Risk Month. That will be in November's topic. So welcome. I'm very excited to have you all in my kitchen today. Some business for the format of our program is I will be giving you some information related to the American Heart Association's guidelines and how to take those guidelines and put them into your kitchen, into your cooking methods, and help you really interpret those guidelines. Not only will I be giving you lots of tips and explaining things as I go for substitutions and for healthy cooking methods, we'll also do a couple of cooking demonstrations. You should have received the recipe in your inbox, mailed to you separately from the Eventbrite email. If you did not for any reason, there will be a survey at the end of today's program. You can put your email address in there and your name and indicate it, and we'll be sure to get a copy of the recipes to you today. I welcome you to cook along with me during the cooking portions. If you're choosing to do so, please preheat your ovens to 400 degrees. No pressure. You certainly don't have to. You can certainly watch and make these recipes later, but if you're feeling the need to get dinner or lunch cooking out of the way, feel free to cook along with me. This program is being recorded, so if you are not able to stay for the whole time, or if you wish to refer back to this for any reason later on, or if you wish to share it with others, a link will be sent to you for the recording later today or early tomorrow, so you'll have this as a reference on our YouTube page. If you have any questions during this program, feel free to put them in the chat function. I will be checking, or the Q&A function, whatever is easier for you. I will be checking them as I go. At certain points, when I'm doing a cooking demonstration, I will be tipping my camera down so you can see my hands. And if for any reason there's a little bit of a lag in me answering your question, that's the reason why. But I invite you to ask questions as you go along, and certainly put the question in the chat function. It is in webinar mode, so there is no unmuting, there is no raising your hands for me to let you ask your question. So please type your question for me. And with that, before we get started, I'm going to have everybody do a little poll. All right, so you're going to see a box pop up on your screen, and I invite you to answer this question. Rate your agreement with the following statement. Eating heart healthily means I do not get to enjoy food anymore. I totally agree. This is 100% how I feel. I somewhat agree. This is kind of how I feel. Or I disagree. I have confidence that I can still enjoy delicious food and my favorites in moderation. Just kind of want to take a poll, see what everybody has to say. Give everyone a second to answer. All right. And let's see what everybody says. All right, so the majority of you says you disagree, you have confidence you can still enjoy delicious foods and favorites in moderation. I'm glad to see such a positive attitude because that's what I'm hoping to inspire today. But a good portion of you, a quarter of you, say you somewhat agree, this is kind of how I feel. And let's see if today's conversation and presentation can help change your mind a little bit. Hope to instill some of that inspiration for you. All right. So let's get started. Okay, so as I mentioned today, we're going to talk about what heart disease is a little bit. And in this case, we're talking about coronary heart disease. And this class is really focused on prevention. So I will say that If you have been diagnosed with coronary artery disease or coronary heart disease and you are receiving medication or treatment for your doctor with it, please know this class is really focused on prevention, and I urge you to speak to your doctor about any specific medical conditions. I'll be reviewing the American Heart Association's latest recommendations and helping you, in the most sense of the word, putting into practice in your kitchen. My focus as a dietitian is in the culinary world. I like to take information and put it into tangible practice. So that's going to be what we focus on today. Our two recipes that I'll be making are crunchy baked chicken and smashed potatoes. My style is, I know that everyone loves comfort food, and I love to show you how you can enjoy delicious comfort style food in a heart healthy way. So that's what we'll be making today. Okay, so what is coronary heart disease? Coronary heart disease is the buildup of plaque in your arteries. You may have heard those buzzwords before. Essentially, when you go to your doctor and you get your cholesterol level checked, they're checking for your level of risk for having coronary heart disease. And they check your good cholesterol, which is your LDL cholesterol, your bad cholesterol, which is your LDL cholesterol, and your good cholesterol, your HDL cholesterol, to see what your level of risk is. And in addition to that, there are a number of other risk factors for coronary heart disease, including your blood pressure levels and whether or not you have a familial history of high cholesterol, high blood pressure, or coronary heart disease, heart attack, stroke, any of those risk factors, as well as your weight. So those who are considered in the obese category with a BMI over 30 are considered at increased risk. But I will say that I do believe in the practice of health at every size, and that's not necessarily the case in every regard. If you have comorbidities like diabetes, that is a condition that certainly can increase your risk of coronary heart disease. They often go hand in hand. If you are a smoker, definitely increases your risk for developing coronary heart disease, as well as if you are a postmenopausal age as a woman or older than 45 for men. Now, I will say that these are risk factors, but you have a lot of power and control over whether or not you develop coronary heart disease. Just because it's in your family or you have some of these risk factors does not mean that you automatically will develop coronary heart disease, and something that we don't need to work on and focus on for prevention. Nutrition, exercise, and your overall lifestyle stress management are really key to reducing your risk, and something that we're going to talk about today in terms of nutrition. So knowing your numbers. So when you hear the word cholesterol, people see it on food labels, they hear it from their doctor, and it can be very confusing. So essentially what cholesterol is it's a waxy substance that your body uses to make new cells or tissues and vitamins and hormones in your body. So it comes from a couple of different sources. It comes from us, actually, from our liver making the cholesterol that you need. It produces cholesterol, but it's also from external things that are foods that we eat, are animal foods predominantly that we eat, foods from animal sources like meat and dairy and cheese and things like that. And the more animal-based foods that you eat cause your liver to in turn make more cholesterol than it otherwise would. And that raises your blood cholesterol level potentially to unhealthy levels. So that's what your doctor is measuring when they're measuring your cholesterol levels. As the cholesterol in your blood increases, so does the risk to your heart and the potential for it turning into plaque in your arteries or in your brain, which can lead to heart attack or stroke. So ideal cholesterol levels. Now, this is not, again, for anybody undergoing cholesterol treatment for high cholesterol, but ideally for the general public from a prevention standpoint, these are your numbers that you want to aim to be below for total cholesterol, LDL, which is your bad cholesterol, HDL, which is your good cholesterol, and your triglyceride levels. And triglyceride levels is a different thing. Triglycerides are measuring the process and metabolism that your body takes to convert food into energy. And they're predominantly from eating too much carbohydrates or too much sugar. It causes extra levels of of this to float around in your bloodstream. And what happens, and especially refined sugars, like white rice, candies, sodas, things like that, as well as alcohol intake. And that causes your triglyceride levels in your blood to potentially be too high, which in turn can increase your risk of coronary heart disease as well. So important to get to know your numbers. There's a lot more information on the American Heart Association's website to really break it down based on your diagnosed conditions, your level of risk. Okay, so what are the overall American Heart Association's recommendations for a heart healthy diet? Generally speaking, to eat an overall healthy dietary pattern. What exactly does that mean? That means to eat an abundance of fruits, vegetables, whole grains, low saturated fat meats, to eat foods prepared in a healthy way, to eat also a lot of plant-based foods, plant-based proteins, nuts, seeds, avocados, healthy fats. And we're going to talk all about that today to put it into practice. It talks about how to limit certain types of fat. Trans fat is the big one, limiting saturated fat as well, sodium, salt, sweets, and sugars. And then this vague one, to eat less of nutrient poor foods, which we're going to talk all about and break this down. And again, if at any point anyone has any questions as I'm talking, please type them into the chat. So the overall recommendation that they say for recommendation number 1 is a healthy dietary pattern. So what exactly does that mean? I prefer to use this one. This is from the Harvard School of Public Health's plate to help visualize it for us. There is also our government's in America's My Plate. I prefer the Harvard School of Public Health's plate for us to understand because it's a little bit more specific in exactly what it means. So at any given meal, at any given time, it's recommended that half your plate be filled with an abundance of fruits and vegetables of multiple different colors. They could be steamed, they could be raw, they could be grilled, they could be roasted. And we're going to talk about how to eat more fruits and vegetables in a flavorful and enjoyable way. But the goal is to take your plate and fill it halfway with fruits and vegetables. Some of you are saying you can't really read the graphic. It's also emailed to you in the PDF that was sent to you, so you'll be able to see it. You can also go to the Harvard School of Public Health and see the imagery and exactly the wording there. The idea is just for you to see the plate right now. The words themselves you can go and check out for yourself. So abundance of fruits and vegetables. And again, when they say the plate, let's back up a little bit and talk about this. They're truly talking about a 9-inch plate. Especially in America, the dinner plate has grown in circumference. And when you're really talking about control and plate measure of planning, you're talking about a 9-inch plate, which in America is usually a salad plate. So whenever thinking of the visualization in your head, stick to using that 9-inch salad plate whenever you're plating something for yourself. I myself in my own household tend to use those predominantly and save the 12-inch ones for serving, to be honest with you. The 9-inch plate was what it originally started as, and it's where we want to move towards. And then 1/4 of your plate, whole grains or a starchy vegetable. We're going to talk all about how to make whole grains and starchy vegetables interesting. And then healthy proteins. What exactly does all of this mean? So thinking about this as a visual as we go through all of our discussion today. Okay, so let's start with the protein one. When we talk about the American Heart Association's protein recommendation, we're predominantly talking about fish, poultry, eggs, and vegetarian choices. Vegetarian choices being beans, lentils, legumes, peas, nuts, seeds, tempeh, tofu, things like that. And a gold standard, what the American Heart Association recommends, is to have fish a couple of times a week, 2 times per week. And there are a lot of websites you can go to if you're concerned with mercury levels to look to see what levels of mercury are in each fish choice. But generally speaking, the smaller the fish, the less mercury it has. So choices that are larger, like a tuna, a huge fish that's eating other fish, is going to be higher in mercury levels. One you want to choose less, versus the smaller fish, like the sardines, for example, or shrimp. Those are going to be lower in cholesterol levels. And then you want to choose things in terms of animal proteins, like your chicken and your turkey. Eggs used to be something we would say to shy away from, but it's actually totally encouraged for you to have 4 to 5 egg yolks per week and very healthy. You do not need to throw that yolk away, and it's delicious and a rich source of vitamins and minerals. The one thing you do want to think about when you're choosing red meats is to choose the leaner cuts of red meats, the ones that are less marbled. So, for example, a flank steak or 95% ground beef, and just to think about eating it much less often. Especially in America, we tend to eat those, some Americans once or twice a day or several times a week. Think of it more as a special treat, maybe once or a couple times a month, and focusing more on the other end of the spectrum. And I'm going to give you some ideas of how exactly you can do this and to go more plant-based, not necessarily vegan or entirely plant-based, but how to reduce and balance some of your proteins. And in general, when you think about your food preparation of proteins, you want to think about your roasting, your grilling, sauteing, braising, baking, air frying, which is a really, really fun device, which is basically a super efficient convection oven. Cooks things really fast, gets it really crunchy, and it's a very healthy way of mimicking frying, which is very satisfying if you're missing those deep fried feelings or tastes. Slow and pressure cooking. Those are the methods you really want to stick with and enjoy for most of your protein preparation. Now, when it comes to your preparation, people always think hand in hand comes oils. And this is a question that always comes up. The healthiest oils are the ones you see here on your screen. The olive oils, the canola oils, corn, peanuts, safflower, soybeans, sunflower oils, sesame oils, avocado oils, and they all have different smoke points, which means some are better for sauteing, and some might be better for grilling versus some might be better for salad dressings. And it's good to research a little bit. The American Heart Association actually has a really good chart about this, about which ones to use when. But sticking to use that and staying away from the butters, the coconut oil is a big misconception. People think coconut oil is super healthy, but in terms of a heart risk, it's actually very high in saturated fat, which is the type of fat that we're trying to reduce with all of these recommendations here. So you really, instead of, buying into the hype about coconut oil, from a heart health perspective, you really want to stick to the ones on the screen, stay away from butter and lard and margarines and things like that. I'm a purist, so I really tend to recommend in practice natural oils versus any of the margarine-based concoctions that are out there on the market. I tend to recommend things that are natural. I see some things here on the chat about eggs. The gold standard of eggs, like I said, is 4 to 5 egg yolks per week. If you're eating several eggs in a day, perhaps if your cholesterol levels are perfectly fine, maybe it's fine for you. But in general, the recommendation is to stick to under 5. Let's see. And yes, no problem clarifying about the coconut oil. Okay, so let's dig into this a little bit deeper. Oh, forgot to mention the milk, the dairy. So cheese is one of the biggest things that you really want us to limit as much as possible. It's one of the biggest culprits in raising our cholesterol levels. A portion size of cheese is about 2 playing dice. If any of you like to play games, you know how small those playing dice are. That's a portion of cheese. So in general, we want to limit our cheese and use alternatives. Nutritional yeast, for example, is a really great way to get that cheesy-like flavor without adding extra cheese. Sometimes I'll make air pop popcorn with nutritional yeast. That's a good example of a way to substitute versus Parmesan cheese. And switching to lower fat milk, again, that's about reducing the saturated fat or switching to a plant-based milk. Okay. All right, so the first and foremost, eating more fruits and vegetables. How do we do this? The yeast was nutritional yeast for those who are asking. eat more fruits and vegetables. So veggies and fruits should be half your plate. So let's try to refocus our concepts of how we plan for meals. If it's half of your plate, it should be the abundance, the biggest thing that we're eating. Maybe they should be what we focus the most on, rather than thinking about the protein as the focus, or the grain, or the starchy vegetable as the focus. Let's give veggies our attention. So in that effort, rather than being an afterthought and something we throw onto the side, especially if they aren't something that you enjoy so much, you really want to think about ways that you can enjoy fruits and vegetables in lots of different ways. So the simplest one is to have crudité or fresh raw chopped veggies in your refrigerator at any point. So you can always grab it easily. You can buy it pre-made or you can chop it yourself. This could be carrots, celery, peppers, tomatoes, any types of vegetables that you enjoy, just ready and wash in your refrigerator to add. By the same token, to have frozen fruits and vegetables in your freezer ready to go so that you can always easily prepare them for a meal. So I like to say to mix it up, right? Vegetables don't have to be a side, but they can be in a simple way by just making huge trays of roasted vegetables. You can even do that at the beginning of the week and store them in large containers in your refrigerator and reheat them as needed. This could be anything seasonal that you're enjoying at the moment. And just roasting provides that enhanced caramelized flavor that, say you don't like steamed broccoli, roasted broccoli tastes completely different from that. So that might be enough for you to enhance the flavor for you to enjoy it. So roasted vegetables, making large undressed salads. If you're a salad eater, but you don't have time every day to chop your salad, there's no need to. Take your lettuce and all the vegetables that you want to put in there, make a huge container of undressed salad. If you dress it, it will get disgusting. But undressed salad, and just take a handful for your meals when you're ready to go. And then think about adding vegetables to your food rather than just being a side dish. Add vegetables to your eggs when you're making an omelet for yourself in the morning. Add them to your chopped meat if you're making a meatloaf or a meat sauce for your family. Add them to grain dishes, such as instead of having plain rice, have some sauteed vegetables mixed into the rice. Have lots of soups and stews. We're about to come upon fall and that type of season. Think about vegetables being something. Maybe you have a cup of soup with your dinner, or having a stew. Say it's a chicken stew, and there's an abundance of vegetables in the stew. People are asking about my next one. Have dishes with zoodles. Zoodles, I don't know if it's a Webster dictionary word, but it is a word in America. And it essentially means taking zucchini and turning it into spaghetti-like, uh, looks like spaghetti. And you use that as instead of a noodle, it's a zoodle. So instead of having a pasta dish with full pasta, make it half zoodles, half noodles. That's a way to add more vegetables in. Dip vegetables into things to make them taste better for yourself, such as hummus or guacamole. Add vegetables in ways that you can't taste them, like smoothies or fruit purees into baking. Lots of good ways to add more fruits and vegetables in. Now, there are a lot of questions coming through before we get started about nuts. So nuts, any nut is 100% heart healthy. They're a great way to help raise that good cholesterol or HDL cholesterol, to have nuts and seeds if you're allergic to nuts or don't enjoy nuts, as a snack, say instead of chips, or to make homemade trail mix that you keep in your refrigerator to have at any time. Instead of using butter or mayo, substitute and have a nut or a seed butter. There are lots of different kinds. There's peanut butter, but yes, there's also almond butter, cashew butter, sesame seed butter, sunflower seed butter. There are a million different kinds. Try having that instead of butter on your toast in the morning. Swap nuts and seeds in a salad instead of cheese. Try using nut flours in your baking, or instead of using them wherever you would use breadcrumbs. This is a very big gluten-free method, but it's also a great option to boost the nutritional content of your dishes. I would use them, say, if I was making meatballs, or if I was making breaded chicken that I bake in the oven, I will sometimes use that. And while nuts, there's a question coming through, well, nuts are high in fat, 25 to 30% of our calories should be from healthy fat. It's an important part of our ways to reduce other things. So we have a little less carbohydrates maybe, or a little less protein, and balance it out with some healthy fats, which are very protective against heart disease. Nuts, seeds, avocado, olive oils, things like that. Really important to include in your diet as a substitution. And then add nuts. I add them to my casserole dishes. I add them to my baking, my fried rice, my salads. It goes on and on how I substitute in some nuts. Now, I'm not saying I'm having bowls and bowls of nuts as a snack. A portion size is what fits into the palm of my hand. So we're talking small portions, but it's a swap. Going plant-based, so having things that aren't always meat and protein for your protein focus. So having canned beans or lentils in replace of meat where you can. I make a bolognese sauce that's half ground turkey, half portobello mushroom. My kids devour it. They love it. And I'm only using half the amount of meat that I would, not necessarily always going fully plant-based, which we do sometimes too, but I'm reducing the amount and increasing the vegetables. I puree beans and lentils into soups, which gives it a way to thicken my soup without adding heavy cream. It's a really, really nice way to thicken with potatoes, root vegetables, pureed beans, nuts. Is a great way to get that creamy-like consistency without all that saturated fat that I'm recommending and the American Heart Association recommends you get rid of. Try things that maybe you've never tried before. Try veggie burgers. There are lots of recipes for homemade veggie burgers. Switch to plant-based milks. Oat milk is a very well accepted one, very neutral taste that you could enjoy. And other substitutions, subbing in avocado for cheese or mayo. The possibilities are endless. Oh, there's a question in the chat here about seeds. So an example of seeds could be pumpkin seeds, sunflower seeds, chia seeds, flax seeds, so many different types of seeds. And then you want to think about choosing whole grains. So whole grains doesn't have to just be brown rice and wheat bread. There's a whole abundance of whole grains that you can try. Try them in small amounts and try mixing them in. If you're not a whole grain person, try mixing white rice with some other grains. I taught my kids to like quinoa by mixing white rice with quinoa together. And they saw that it wasn't just a plain bowl of quinoa, and they really liked it. And now they'll have quinoa in soups or mixed in with other grains as well. Try substituting a whole grain fried rice or making a risotto out of barley, for example. If you're not the biggest whole wheat bread person, there are brands that make white whole wheat, and that is a really, really great option. Try mixing oats into other foods. You don't have to just have plain oatmeal. You can make muffins, for example, and mix in some oats. You can even grind oats into smoothies. They don't have to be cooked. You can eat them raw. Snack on air-popped popcorn. Or try mixing, again, blending the white flour with the whole grain flours. And there are so many different types. There's oat flour, there's quinoa flour, there's, as I said before, more on the nut spectrum, the nut flours, and try to mix it together. It does not have to be all or nothing. Okay, a question coming through. Are there produce, in the produce frozen section, are there zoodles? I'm not sure, to be honest with you. Give it a check. Give it a check. Okay. Let's keep going here. Okay, so we're going to start our first cooking demo just to mix it up a little bit because I've been talking a lot here. So I'm going to tilt my screen down and we're going to start by making our crunchy baked chicken. Now, I will say that the crunchy baked chicken, as my husband says, is not a substitute for fried chicken, but it is a really nice way to incorporate in some crunch and satisfy that need for crunch without having something deep fried, and save the super, super deep fried stuff for a very special treat. So what I'm gonna start with is taking my plain Greek yogurt here, and I'm gonna mix in my Dijon mustard. Okay. Plain Greek yogurt is a really, and the Dijon mustard is going to help really make this chicken very, very moist, and it's going to be our coating for our crunchy topping. All right, so you mix it together until it looks like this. You're also adding some healthy probiotics from with the Greek yogurt, as well as some calcium. And I'm going to take my basting brush. Oh, let me bring my baking tray over here. Easy place to put it. I'm gonna take my basting brush and I'm gonna baste it. But before I do that, I'm gonna take what I used, crushed corn flakes, because I was all out of bran flakes this morning, but you could use bran flakes or corn flakes or a mix of both. And I'm gonna take my seasoning, which is my garlic powder, my paprika, my black pepper, my salt, and I'm gonna mix it in. And I'm using a shallow dish here because it's really gonna make the mixing a lot easier. And I tend to just use my hands. I think hands are like the best cooking tools. And I'm mixing in my seasoning until it's well mixed. I'm gonna put that to the side. All right, now I'm ready to baste. So I'm gonna take my mixture here, and I'm going to coat my chicken. And I'm not gonna lie to you, this is a messy one, but it's okay. Take your rings off if you're wearing them. And I will have to go wash my hands really quickly after I'm done preparing all of this. And this is just a really simple, family-friendly meal that you can have fresh for dinner. It also makes great leftovers. And I took my chicken breast, chicken breasts tend to be really big, and I cut them in half. Some of these were extra big, so I cut a couple of them in thirds. But you get them to the portion size of what's recommended from the American Heart Association. So yes, it will shrink on cooking, but I want this to fit in my hand, okay? Portion size of meats and chicken and poultry, that's one of the most important things is, yes, the healthy preparation, and yes, choosing healthy cuts, especially if you're using red meat, but it's also about how much, right? And the portion size that fits into the palm of your hand is a portion size of protein. None of us, especially in America, are devoid of protein. We get plenty of protein. So a portion size that fits into your hand is a portion size, and that's all you need. And I promise, even if you're an athlete, that is enough. Especially if you're incorporating in some snacks, healthy nuts, seeds as snacks, guacamole, other things. Okay, so I'm gonna put my bowl to the side. And what I have here is I have my chicken in here. Now, I did not use boneless chicken. I see that. I'm using bone-in because it, you could use boneless if you wanted to, but I chose to use bone-in for today's demonstration. Could be like more like a chicken finger. This is more imitating like a fried chicken. And I'm gonna coat it evenly on all sides. And like I said, this is messy. So just be prepared to get messy. And really, I haven't figured out a better way to do it where it's more evenly coated than using my hands. So using my hands has definitely been my preferred method. All right. So I'm gonna evenly coat all of these. And what I've done with my baking tray is I've lined my baking tray so that it's a double bake. So I took a cooling rack, and I'll show you in a second. I lined it so that the air can circulate all the way around my chicken. And what that does is it allows my chicken to get crunchy on all sides, because nobody likes soggy chicken. Not really what you want. And so I'll show you. It really helps to allow it to get crunchy on every side. Okay. So if you see here, I have my cooling rack there, and I have a space between that and the baking tray, which is going to allow my chicken to cook on all sides and get crunchy. Just going to wash up from a food safety perspective. When you touch raw chicken, you definitely do not want to be touching anything else until you have thoroughly washed your hands. Salmonella risk from touching the raw chicken is high, so you definitely want to make sure you are washing your hands thoroughly And I am taking the time to demonstrate that for all of you. Okay, so now that my chicken is done, I'm gonna stick that into the oven. And if you're using an oven, again, it was set to 400 degrees before. If you're using an oven that's about 400 degrees, it should take about 40 to 45 minutes. And again, from a food safety perspective, you want to think about it being done when the internal temperature using an instant read thermometer reaches for 165 degrees. That's how you know chicken is done. Not if you cut into it and the juices run clear, not if you touch it and it's right. The true way you know chicken is done is if using an instant read thermometer and it reads 165 degrees. So let me just see if there are some questions coming through the chat here that I might have missed before we move on to our prepping of the potatoes. Okay, so I see a lot of questions here. All right, so all right, could oat bran be substituted? Oat bran could be substituted, yes, definitely. Plant-based milk is preferable to fat-free milk. You could use either, definitely could use either, but whenever you're choosing a plant-based milk, you want to choose the unsweetened version. We're going to talk a little bit about that. Substitutes for yogurt, you could definitely use eggs instead, or you could use low-fat sour cream. You want to keep the skin on. Yes, I kept the skin on. When you could also place the flakes in a Ziploc bag and shake the pieces until they're coated. Yes, you could do that. I tend to be a little green in my house. I tend to limit plastic as much as possible, but you could. Should we wash the chicken first? No. So from a food safety perspective, you're just contaminating your sink. There's no scientific evidence that shows that it reduces your risk of foodborne illness. You're just making your sink dirty. All right. Okay. Any other questions here? Okay. Dijon mustard is going to give it a better flavor than the yellow mustard, but you could try it with the yellow mustard. Okay. All right. So we're going to move on to our potato prep. So we want to get that going. Okay. So for our potatoes, what I did to get things started, what this recipe calls for is something called cauliflower cream. Now let's talk about traditional mashed potatoes, right? They have whole milk and butter and all sorts of things that I've been explaining to you that maybe aren't the best idea. So cauliflower cream is something that a lot of vegan chefs have been using lately, and it's basically pureed cauliflower that is a natural thickener of things. So I use cauliflower cream in a lot of different ways. I use it in mac and cheese recipes. I've used it in thickening soups. And I'm going to show you here how to do it with mashed potatoes. So I showed you pictures here. So the whole cooking time, I didn't have time to show you how to make cauliflower cream, but I'll walk you through it. Basically, I took a whole head of cauliflower. I cut it up into pieces and put it in a huge pot with rice milk or whatever neutral milk you have. You could use like a skim milk, for example, or like an oat milk, something neutral, and a little bit of olive oil. And I put it in there with a cup of low sodium vegetable stock as well. And I let it simmer for like 20 minutes. And then when it was all done, I put it in a blender and I pureed it. And that's what I have, a quart of cauliflower cream that I can use in a variety of different ways. You could season this and eat it as cauliflower soup, or you can use it as a replacement for wherever you would use heavy cream, essentially. And it's a lot more nutritious and a lot more heart healthy. And I will tell you that my children and my husband both were like, this tastes good. I was doubtful, but it's delicious. So you could use it in lots of different ways. Can you use almond milk? Yes, you can. You can use almond milk. All right, so I'm going to tilt my screen down here. We're going to get the potatoes going. So I am using Yukon Gold potatoes here. You're just going to chop up your potatoes into a rough chop so that they can boil. And I leave the skin on because the skin is where the nutrition is, where the fiber is. I'm not peeling them. It's a lot more work too.
Can you peel the, freeze the cauliflower cream? Yes, you can. I would freeze it in like ice cube trays to make it really easy, or you could freeze it in small containers so that you don't freeze a whole quart and then not be able to use it. And it's a really, really nice method to make something heart healthy, but still, again, get that mouth feel that you're looking for. So you chop your potatoes until they're about that size, maybe about 3 inches, 2 to 3 inches. And I'm gonna cover it with cold water. You always wanna cook potatoes in cold water. So I'm gonna cover it with cold water, and it's gonna cook on the stove for about 20 minutes. Once that is done, I'm gonna show you how to smash it and turn it and use the cauliflower cream. Okay. All right, here. Okay, so the second recommendation of the American Heart Association, the first one is what exactly to eat, right? How much to eat of it, what to eat of it. And now this one is what to limit a little bit. We talked a lot about limiting saturated fat and some substitutions and how to do that. And we'll have some even more tips at the end when we play a little game together. But there is also some things to look out for, like when you're grocery shopping. So trans fat is a mostly man-made fat that's added to a lot of processed foods so that it will be more shelf stable. What does that mean? That means it won't go bad in the grocery stores. So things like baked goods, processed bars, cereals, breads, things like that, food manufacturers add trans fats to them. So those really raise your bad cholesterol and lower your good cholesterol. So it's very, very important for you to look for words on a food label that say partially hydrogenated or fully hydrogenated oils. Margarines or shortening is another word that means trans fats. You really want to comb through your grocery store and look through ingredients labels to see if it has any of those words. When it comes to salt, again, the American Heart Association really says we want to limit our salt intake, not only for our blood pressure, but for our overall heart health, reducing stress and strain on the heart from water retention and things like that. So you want to look on a food label to choose packaged foods that are less than 140 milligrams per serving. And that's when you start paying attention, it's pretty restrictive there, that you really, really want to make sure that you are choosing options that are less than 140 milligrams or as fresh as possible. I'm just going to take a drink. And then you also want to check for words that mean sugar. There are tons of words, and there's a list of this on the American Heart Association's website, of foods that mean sugar. And there's a ton of different types of sugar they can put on the food label so that they can add more sugar to their product without you seeing that word in the ingredients list. So there's tons of different types, anything from syrups to extracts, so lots of different ones. And it's recommended as much as possible to eliminate added sugars to our diets. As we said before, the more sugar you eat, the higher triglyceride levels are, which means that you want to limit your added intake of sugar. There were a couple questions coming through. Let me just take a look here and see what people are saying. So when the veggies are not organic, is it better to take the skin off? It's a risk-benefit ratio there. You could take the skin off or you could leave it on. Ideally, some of fruits and vegetables you want to purchase is organic if you're concerned about pesticide intake, potatoes being one of them. But you're losing the fiber and the nutrition. So it's a little bit of a cost-benefit ratio there. Are plant-based butters okay? Again, it's better, in my opinion, to choose things that are naturally forming rather than those plant-based butters that have a lot of added chemicals and thickeners to them. I would rather recommend not to have those, but yes, plant-based butters are okay. Okay, and this last question here, I'm going to get to the HDL via food at the end of the presentation. But the white potatoes are not healthy. White potatoes are a naturally occurring food. They have a lot of nutrition, vitamins and minerals and fiber. Should we be eating them all day long in large portions? No. Can we eat small portions of white potatoes and they'd be absolutely beneficial to our diet? 100%. 100%. French fried potatoes? No. A baked potato or the recipe we're making today? Yes. Okay. All right, so salt. People say limiting cooking with salt. How is it going to be flavorful? There are lots of ways to flavor foods without adding salt. So using fresh herbs, dried spices, as we're doing today with the dried spices, using low sodium stocks, as we're also doing today in the cauliflower cream, and then adding acidity also gives food flavor without adding the salt. So using cooking wine to simmer into dishes and let reduce out the alcohol content, acids like vinegars or fresh citrus juice or the zest of citrus fruits, using extracts like almond extracts or vanilla extracts, or spice if you can tolerate it, hot peppers, things like that. These all give foods flavor without adding salt. And yes, adding a little bit of salt to your cooking is okay, but not in abundance, and not a ton of processed sodium like bouillon cubes and things like that that are really concentrated amounts of sodium, which are really not good for you. And I will say it takes time. You can't go from eating a very high salt diet to eating a low salt diet, but very quickly. It's gradual. Your taste buds adjust. What about reducing added sugars? So added sugars are the addition of sugar to food. It is not naturally occurring sugars like from fruits or fruits and vegetables, but they are things that are added to something like a maple syrup or a honey or white sugar or brown sugar added to a food to make it additionally sweet. So like we said before, sugar increases your triglyceride levels by having too much carbohydrates or too much added sugars. So you really want to think about how you can reduce sugar in your diet, and that really is what corresponds with having excessive, having an increased risk of diabetes. And then we'll talk a lot about that in the November class. So reducing your sugar levels, switching to unsweetened beverages like water, seltzer, instead of having more juices and sodas, eating less of what's called nutrient poor foods, as they specified before. So that's less of baked goods, candies, ice creams, things that don't provide us with a lot of nutrition, but provide us with other things. They taste good and they make us feel good, but they don't provide us with the nutrition. So eating less of that reduces your intake of sugar. Choosing unsweetened versions of items, like I said before, plain plant-based milks or plain yogurt, for example, which we use today, and then sweetening it yourself by, say, adding your own honey or your own fresh fruit. When you control the sugar versus the food manufacturer, you're inherently eating a lot less sugar. And choose foods that are naturally sweet to help satisfy cravings. And salt and sugar are very similar. The more sugar you eat, the more sugar you crave. So while it's okay to indulge yourself in having a piece of dark chocolate or a cookie every now and then, it's what you naturally want to do is reduce your overall intake of sugar. And by eating sweet things like fruits, which give us so much antioxidants and vitamins and minerals, you're giving yourself that sweetness, which helps subside some of the other sugar cravings. Question about stevia. So artificial sweeteners, yes, they are approved by the American Heart Association and everyone. But again, I tend to recommend using natural sweetness rather than artificial sweetness. I think chemicals, even though they are natural, stevia is naturally occurring, the studies and the research isn't out exactly on how it affects our brains and our cravings for sugar. So I am not a dietitian that is a big proponent of those about stevia, truvia, all of those types of products. But yes, if it works for you, they are perfectly fine and approved. Okay, so other ways to sweeten foods naturally using culinary methods, using mashed or crushed fruits to sweeten things like crushed berries or pureed bananas,
or date puree is a really good one, especially in your baking. Choosing sweet vegetables like sweet potatoes. When you caramelize fruits, such as grilling peaches or sauteing apples, they get even sweeter. It's just like when I said roasting vegetables, you're caramelizing the flavor. So you're enhancing and concentrating that flavor. It makes it taste even sweeter. You can also add things to enhance your sweetness, like cocoa powder, cocoa nibs, vanilla extract, vanilla beans, cinnamon. Things like that actually work to enhance your perception of sweetness. So adding that, say if you were to have a bowl of plain yogurt with some honey in there, a little bit of honey in there, and some berries, and then you put cinnamon on top, those berries and the yogurt would taste even sweeter. And when you're choosing sweeteners, choose natural versions rather than adding white sugar. Use honey, maple syrup, agave, things like that that are naturally occurring. Some questions in the chat here. We are coming up on time, so I want to make sure I keep going. When you use salt, Himalayan salt or Celtic gray salt, do they substitute evenly for white salt? No, the bigger the salt grain, it's not an even distribution. You can use less of regular table salt. Okay, let's see. Okay, so recommendation number 3, eat less nutrient poor foods. So foods that are devoid of nutrition, that don't give us any vitamins or minerals or protein or healthy fats, things of that nature. That is what a nutrient poor foods mean. So think about reframing your perspective of food to serve as with the intention to fuel and to nourish your body. And that each bite you take, with the majority of the bites you take, to do something positive for the health and the nutrition of yourself. So not that, again, like I said before, not that you can't ever have your favorite cookie or your favorite ice cream or things like that, but thinking about food as something that's nourishing, that provides that for us as human beings, helps us to make each bite count and to find ways to healthify options. And we're going to play a little game in a minute. Yes, that's not a real word, but we're going to come up with a game, play a game in a minute to think of some ways that we can make some things a little bit more nutritious. And then save those nutrient poor foods, or I like to take the positive spin, less nutrient rich foods for a special treat, for when you really enjoy them. Because again, they're part of our culture, they're part of our lives. There's no reason to feel guilty about eating them, but to eat them in moderation. All right, so let's do our smashed potatoes, and then we can play a little game together. All right, so I've got my potatoes here. I'm going to drain off the water, and I've cooked them until I can pierce them with a fork. That's just the goal. All right, here. Okay. So I'm going to take my handy dandy potato masher. And as I'm mashing here, there was a lot of question coming through about raising your HDL cholesterol levels. And the best way you can do that is not only by exercising, but by eating your healthy fresh fish twice a week is a really important culinary one, as well as having your healthy fats incorporated into your diet. Couple slices of avocado, handful of nuts every day. Those are really, really big ones to help raise your HDL cholesterol. When it comes to lowering your LDL cholesterol, you want to think about definitely reducing the saturated fat from the animal products, eating more plant-based, as we've been talking about this whole time, exercising, having a lot more fruits and vegetables. That's a really big one, from the fiber and the sterols in your vegetables to help reduce your LDL cholesterol, as well as having certain whole grains like oatmeal, beans, lentils. Those help to reduce by having more what's called soluble fiber. And soluble fiber helps to literally pull the cholesterol out of our bloodstream, and we poop it out. So it's important for us to have those types of foods to help not only pull it out, but reduce the plaque formation on our arteries. Okay, so once you've gotten your aggression out on those potatoes and you've smashed them to your desired consistency, I like them a little bit on
with a little bit of body, not totally smooth. Everybody is different. Every family is different, but that's how I choose to eat it. I'm gonna season it with my salt and pepper here. All right, just a little bit. And now here comes my cauliflower cream. It's beautiful consistency here. Every potato is a little different. Some potatoes are more watery, some potatoes are less watery. So you kind of got to give it a feel. It said half a cup in the recipe, but you might need a little more, you might need a little less of the cauliflower cream. And see, instead of using butter and heavy cream, I'm going to have beautiful creamy potatoes. There are a lot of recipes out there for having pureed cauliflower instead of mashed potatoes. No one's fooling me. Pureed cauliflower does not taste like mashed potatoes, so I prefer this method a lot more. All right, I'm gonna pull my chicken out of the oven, clean everything up for you so you can see exactly what everything looks like when it's all done, in case yours is still cooking. I've got my beautiful chicken here. And I've got my portion of potatoes here. So you see how crunchy, I'm trying to get it really close to the camera there so you can see how beautiful and crunchy that chicken turned out. I've got my broccolini, half my plate, and my satisfying portion of creamy mashed potatoes there. I can't wait to eat it. All right, so in the 3 minutes we have remaining, I'll take a couple of questions. I was gonna launch a couple of polls to see if you wanted to see if we can healthify some things. Let's do a couple. All right. Let's do this one. This is a fun one. All right. How can I make heart-healthy baked goods? Check all that apply. Substitute oil for butter, substitute coconut oil for butter, substitute fruit purees for butter, or substitute margarine instead of butter. And you can check all that apply. That made sense to you based on what we said today. All right, let's see what everybody's saying here. And I see some questions coming through as we're waiting from the polls. So does boiling potatoes lose lots of nutrients compared to other methods of cooking? It's a good question. So you always lose some nutrients in the boiling process. You could use that water in somewhere else to get those nutrients back, but you are losing a little bit. Whenever you cook anything, you're losing some. Sourdough bread is perfectly fine. Do I use cauliflower cream for baking too as an alternative for whipped cream? No, the flavor doesn't taste right. I keep it to savory. Is that a 9-inch plate? The internal of my plate is 9 inches. So inside of the plate here in the circumference where all the food is 9 inches. Let me see. Okay, let's see. And the poll. So 75% of you say substitute oil for butter, 90% of you say fruit purees for butter, 10% say coconut oil, and 7% say margarine. The answers were substitute oil for butter or substitute fruit purees for butter. As we talked about, coconut oil is not a heart-healthy oil, definitely has more saturated fat than is recommended, and I don't recommend margarine. So substituting oil for butter and fruit purees for butter were the two answers. This is a tough group, a smart group. So let me see what else we can do. All right. To make foods taste sweeter without adding sugar, I can check all that apply. Add cocoa powder, vanilla extract, or cinnamon. Add pureed banana. Add grilled fruit. Use maple syrup or honey instead, or all of the above. Okay, let me see in here. All right, look up aquafaba for an alternative to cream. Oh, liquid from canned chickpeas. Yes, I have heard about this. Thank you for the suggestion. I haven't personally cooked with that yet, but I'm very much looking forward to trying. I think that's a great idea, and I've heard really good things from other culinary dietitians for sure. Okay, let me see here. Gonna end the poll. All right, so 84% of you said all of the above, and that's an excellent answer. Very, very good. Very smart group we have here. All right, we're gonna do one more, and then I'll let everybody go. All right, what is a great substitution for heavy cream? Check all that apply. Non-fat evaporated milk, avocado, pureed root vegetables, half and half, or all of the above. This might be the hardest one. Let's see what it has. And I will say, and our last poll is happening here. If I didn't get to any of your questions, there was so much interaction in the chat. There will be a survey that pops up automatically on your screen within a few seconds after this webinar is over. Just give it a few seconds, please. Fill out the survey. And you can put your question there. If you put your email address and your question, I'll be sure to try to get back to you and make sure your question gets answered. I also really appreciate your feedback. Okay, so this poll here, what is a great substitution for heavy cream? The majority of you said pureed root vegetables. That's definitely one of them. You also can substitute in non-fat evaporated milk is a really, really great one. It's a great substitution for thickening, especially in like a pasta dish or something like that. Avocado can also be a really, really great one. I would not recommend half and half because again, half and half is very, very high in saturated fat. So I would say to stay away from that one and choose the other three. So everybody, thank you so much for joining me today. As I mentioned, this is part one in a 3-part series. Next month in October, I'll be doing another Cooking for Reducing Disease Risk, and that is focusing on cancer and the American Cancer Society's recommendations for reducing your risk of cancer. And same concept, we're reviewing the formats and doing some recipe preparation. I also will be doing another one in November about pre-diabetes and reducing your risk of diabetes in November. So please register for as many of them as you like. Again, please fill out the survey, and the link for the recording will be sent to you later today. Thank you, everyone, and have a great day.